Nayeli had always felt different. Even when she was a young girl running through the warm desert sand, other children laughed freely, played loudly, and moved through life as if they belonged to every part of the world. But Nayeli was the quiet one, the one who watched more than she spoke. Her eyes were soft, thoughtful, always observing things others rarely noticed, the way the wind curved through the canyon, the way the birds communicated in short chirps, the way the evening sun painted the rocks gold before it disappeared behind the mountains. Her quiet nature didn't bother her as a child. She believed there was beauty in watching and learning. But as she grew older, that same quietness began to separate her from the people around her. Her parents had passed away when she was young, leaving her in the care of relatives who did what they could but never truly understood her heart. They weren't unkind, but they had their own families, their own duties, their own lives to manage. Nayeli often felt like a visitor in her own home. She ate with them, slept under their roof, helped with chores, and respected their rules. Yet deep inside, she felt like a shadow living at the edge of their world. She tried to be helpful so no one would feel burdened by her presence. She gathered herbs for the older women, brought water from the river, stitched clothing, and looked after the younger children when needed. Everyone said she was good, gentle, and hard-working. But when it came to matters of her future, the compliments always stayed at the surface. In their community, women usually married within the tribe, often arranged with the approval of families. It wasn't seen as something strange. It was the way life had always been. But every time people talked about matches for the young women, Nayeli's name was never brought into the conversation. No one ever spoke against her. But no one spoke for her either. It was as if she lived in a quiet corner where no one remembered to look. At first, she told herself it didn't matter. She believed fate had its own time. And perhaps her time simply hadn't come yet. But as the seasons passed and she watched girl after girl find someone, she began to wonder if the problem was her. Maybe she was too quiet. Maybe she was too gentle, too patient, too unseen. The feeling grew heavier each year. Settling inside her like a stone, she carried around without choosing it. Her relatives did try, in small ways, to find her a place. They spoke to families, but the responses were always uncertain. Some said she didn't interact enough with people. Others felt she was too reserved. A few even whispered that she was too different, though no one ever explained what that meant. One evening, after a long day of preparing for a small celebration in the camp, Nayeli overheard two of her relatives talking. They didn't know she was nearby, sitting behind the tent, mending a piece of cloth. Their voices were calm but sharp enough to reach her. They said things like, "She is kind, but she never fits anywhere," and "No one chooses her because they don't see her as a good match," and "Maybe she will remain with us forever, because who else would want her?" Their words weren't meant to be cruel, but they pierced her deeper than anything she had ever heard. She didn't cry right away. Instead, she sat very still, as if she had turned into stone. A part of her heart felt like it had quietly cracked. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay awake under the silent desert sky, staring at the stars. Those stars had always comforted her. She believed they watched over everyone equally. But that night, she felt as if even they were far away from her. She wondered why she was so hard to accept. Why people didn't see her heart. Why she felt invisible even when she stood among her own people. She thought about her parents, wishing they had been alive to guide her, to tell her she was enough. She wondered if she would ever hear someone say they wanted her, not because of tradition or pressure, but because they truly saw her. The next morning, she woke with a heavy mind and a tired body. She moved through her chores like someone borrowing strength from yesterday. Her relatives noticed she was quieter than usual, but they assumed she was simply tired from the celebration work. No one knew what she had heard. No one knew what she felt. That afternoon, she walked to the small trading outpost near the edge of their territory. She often went there to exchange handmade items for necessities, medicine, herbs, cloth, or thread. The outpost was also a place where travelers from different towns stopped to rest, trade, and continue their journeys. One of those travelers was Cole, a cowboy known by many in the area. He wasn't from the tribe, but he was respected by many of the elders because he treated everyone with fairness and honesty. He never spoke rudely, never cheated during trade, and always showed respect for their customs. Nayeli had seen him several times in the past. Their interactions were brief, a nod, a greeting, a simple exchange of goods. She never expected him to remember her. But he did. He recognized her quiet presence every time she visited. Cole was the kind of man who noticed things most people overlooked. He noticed when someone seemed troubled, when their shoulders were tense, or their steps slower than usual. When he saw Nayeli approaching that day, he noticed something in her expression, a sadness she was trying to hide. She walked up to him slowly, unsure whether she should speak. Her hands trembled slightly. Her voice felt trapped inside her chest. And she wasn't even sure what she wanted from him. But she knew she didn't want to return to her camp with the same heavy feeling pressing on her heart. Cole greeted her kindly, the same way he always did, with a warm but gentle voice that never made her uncomfortable. His presence felt steady, like a strong tree that didn't sway even when the wind changed direction. For a moment, Nayeli stood silently, looking at the ground. She could feel her heartbeat rising in her chest, almost painful in its intensity. She wanted to speak, but her voice refused to come out. Cole waited patiently, not pushing her, not asking questions. He simply stood there, giving her space. Finally, she took a breath, and her words came out in a fragile whisper. She told him she felt unwanted, unseen, forgotten. She told him she had tried everything to belong, but nothing worked. She told him she was tired of carrying loneliness, like an invisible weight. Then she said something she never imagined she would say to anyone, especially not to him. She asked him to help her find a husband, someone who would accept her, someone who would want her, someone who would give her a place to belong before it was too late. She begged him in a quiet, trembling voice, not out of desperation for romance, but out of a deep desire for dignity and companionship. Cole was stunned. He had seen sadness in people before, but he had never seen someone stand so bravely in their own vulnerability. Her words were not dramatic. They were honest, raw, simple, the kind of truth that came only from someone who had been silent for far too long. He didn't know what to say at first, but he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't let her walk away with that kind of pain still inside her. He looked at her with sincerity and promised he wouldn't ignore her plea. He didn't promise miracles, but he promised effort, understanding, and support. He told her she deserved a chance, not because she begged for it, but because everyone deserved to be seen and valued. In that moment, something shifted in Nayeli's heart. For the first time in a long time, she felt like someone truly heard her. Not out of obligation, not out of pity, but out of genuine care. She wasn't sure where this path would lead, but she knew one thing. She didn't feel as invisible as before. Their journey had not yet begun, but something had already changed. She had taken a step she once believed she was too small to take, and Cole had unknowingly stepped into a story that would connect their lives in ways neither of them could predict. It was the beginning of something fragile yet hopeful, a moment that would open the doors to the journey ahead, one that would challenge both of them, teach them, and reshape the meaning of belonging. Nayeli stood in front of Cole, her breath unsteady, her eyes lowered as if afraid that even the ground might judge her. After she spoke those trembling words, her quiet plea for help, she felt as if she had released something she had held inside for years. A long, heavy silence filled the space between them, and in that silence she wondered if she had made a mistake. Maybe she shouldn't have come to him. Maybe she shouldn't have shared her pain. Maybe she had only exposed how lost she truly felt. But Cole didn't step away. He didn't look confused or uncomfortable. Instead, he studied her face with sincere attention, as if he understood the weight of what she had just shared. He gently lifted his hat and ran a hand through his hair, a small gesture he often made when thinking carefully. After a few moments, he spoke, and his voice was steady, warm, and free from judgment. He told her that she wasn't alone. Not anymore. and that he would try his best to help her. Those simple words loosened something inside Nayeli. She hadn't expected him to agree. In fact, she had expected him to politely refuse or pretend not to understand. But Cole had always been different from others who visited the outpost. He listened more than he talked, and he treated people with steady respect, regardless of where they came from. His response gave her a fragile sense of comfort, like a soft blanket around her shoulders after a long, cold night. He asked her to sit for a moment under the shade of a wooden shelter near the outpost. The sun was bright, and the desert air shimmered with heat. Nayeli sat carefully, her hands resting in her lap, still unsure if she should stay, or stand, or speak again. Cole sat across from her, leaning slightly forward, his elbows on his knees, making sure she didn't feel overwhelmed by his presence. He asked her what had made her feel so hopeless. His tone was gentle, as if inviting her to share only what she was ready to reveal. Slowly, she began to tell him everything. She spoke about her childhood, how she grew up among her relatives, how she tried to help them, how she tried to be useful so no one would feel burdened by her. She explained how the tribe chose partners for young women, but somehow her name was never considered. She told him about the whispers she heard, the subtle comments that made her feel like a shadow instead of a person. Cole listened without interrupting. His expression stayed calm, but his eyes softened with each word she spoke. He had seen loneliness before. Many travelers he met at the outpost carried it silently, buried beneath their chores and responsibilities. But Nayeli's loneliness felt deeper, woven into her life like a thread she could never cut loose. He realized she wasn't asking out of impatience or fear of aging alone. She was asking out of a longing for belonging, something every human deserved. When she finished speaking, she lowered her gaze again, embarrassed that she had spoken so much. She was used to keeping her feelings inside. Talking this openly made her feel exposed, but at the same time she felt relieved, as if she had finally placed her heavy burden in front of someone kind enough to carry part of it. Cole waited a moment before responding. He wanted to choose his words carefully. He told her he didn't think there was anything wrong with her. He told her she wasn't unwanted. He believed her quietness wasn't a weakness, it was part of her strength. Many people talked loudly, but few had the depth she carried. Many people blended in, but Nayeli had a spirit that stood out quietly, like a small light in a dark room. She listened to him, unsure whether to believe his kind words. She had never heard anyone describe her in such a thoughtful way. Her heart ached with both gratitude and disbelief. Cole stood up and offered her his hand to help her rise. He told her they should take this one step at a time. He couldn't promise instant answers, but he could promise to try. He suggested they visit a few nearby settlements, places where he knew good, honest people. People who might see in Nayeli what he saw. Surprised, she asked if he truly meant it. Traveling outside her tribe's land was not something she ever imagined doing, but he assured her that she would be safe and that he would not take her anywhere she wasn't comfortable. She thought deeply for a moment. Staying in her tribe, where she felt invisible, meant continuing the same quiet ache she had lived with for years. Walking beside Cole, even into unfamiliar places, felt strangely safer than staying where she had always been. Finally, she nodded. She would trust him. They began preparing for the journey. Cole secured extra water and simple food for the road. He checked his horse's saddle and reins, making sure everything was strong and safe. He helped Nayeli climb onto the horse first, letting her sit steadily before mounting himself behind her. He didn't sit close enough to frighten her. He always kept respectful distance, but she could still feel the carefulness in his movements. He guided the horse gently, making sure she felt comfortable. The desert stretched out before them, wide and open, with long shadows forming beneath the afternoon sun. The air carried a warm breeze that brushed against their clothes. Nayeli felt nervous but also strangely free. The further they traveled, the more she felt like she was stepping into a world where her life could change. During the ride, Cole spoke occasionally to make her feel at ease. He told her stories of the people he had met in different towns. He described families who were hardworking and kind. He talked about the calm mornings he spent watching the sunrise from the trail. His stories were simple but comforting, like gentle footsteps guiding her through unfamiliar land. Nayeli listened quietly. She rarely spoke, but whenever she did, Cole paid attention. He asked questions about her interests, what she liked to do, what made her feel peaceful, what she hoped for in a partner. Her answers were simple. She liked gathering herbs, stitching blankets, and listening to the sounds of nature. She hoped for someone patient, someone who understood silence as easily as conversation, someone who didn't see her quietness as a flaw, but as a part of who she was. Cole nodded thoughtfully. He understood more about her with each passing hour. He realized she didn't seek grand things, she simply wanted a home where she felt valued. By the time they reached the first small settlement near the river, the sun was beginning to soften. The sky held streaks of orange and pink, and the water reflected the colors beautifully. Cole introduced Nayeli to a family he trusted. They welcomed her kindly, offering her food and a seat near the fire. Nayeli sat quietly, unsure how to interact, but she smiled politely whenever someone spoke to her. Cole didn't force her to speak. He knew she needed time. He sat near her, making sure she felt safe. The family asked questions, not to judge her, but to understand her. They admired her calmness and her respectful manners. But when Cole gently mentioned what she was hoping for, the family grew hesitant. They appreciated her but felt unsure about creating a bond that required understanding between different cultures. They feared misunderstandings. Nayeli sensed their hesitation, and though it hurt a little, she understood. She didn't blame them. Not everyone was ready to accept someone from outside their world. She thanked them with a small bow, grateful for their kindness even if the answer wasn't what she hoped for. As they walked away from the settlement, Cole noticed the quiet sadness in her eyes. He didn't want her to think this journey would only bring disappointment. He told her not to lose hope. He promised that they would continue searching. He reminded her that one rejection didn't define her worth. Nayeli looked at him with a soft expression, touched by his gentle confidence. She realized he wasn't helping her out of duty. He was helping her because he genuinely cared. As they continued down the trail, the evening air grew cooler. The sky darkened slowly, and stars began appearing one by one. For the first time in many nights, Nayeli didn't feel alone under the sky. She had someone walking beside her, someone who didn't let her fade into the background. Her journey of hope was only beginning, but in her heart, she felt a small spark, something warm, something steady, something new. The next morning, the soft light of dawn spread across the quiet landscape, turning the sky pale gold. Nayeli awoke to the gentle sounds of birds and the calm steps of Cole preparing their horses. For a moment, she simply sat still, watching the world wake up around her. The night had been cooler than she expected, and she had slept lightly, but she felt more peaceful than she had in a long time. Something about traveling with Cole had eased her heart, even if only a little. Cole greeted her with a warm nod when he noticed she was awake. He wasn't the type to rush anyone. He allowed her time to adjust, to gather her thoughts, and to step into the new day at her own pace. After they packed their things, they continued their journey along a narrow path that led toward more settlements, where Cole believed she might be welcomed. The trail was long and dusty, but the scenery around them was calming. The wind brushed lightly across the desert grass, and the sun rose slowly behind the distant hills. As they traveled, Cole tried to keep the conversation gentle and comfortable. He didn't push her to talk, but he invited her into small moments that made the journey feel less lonely. He pointed out different plants growing along the path and asked her about the herbs she knew. Nayeli shared small pieces of knowledge: how certain leaves helped treat headaches, how others could be used for calming tea, and which flowers were good for stitching onto clothing to create simple patterns. Her voice was quiet, but there was a soft glow in her expression when she spoke about things she understood well. Cole listened carefully. He admired her calmness and her ability to see beauty in small things. Most people rushed through life without paying attention to details, but Nayeli noticed the gentle shifts in nature. He found that admirable, even refreshing. They stopped to rest by a small stream around midday. Nayeli washed her hands in the cool water, watching the sunlight sparkle on the surface. Cole filled their water containers and offered her some dried fruit and bread. They ate quietly for a while, letting the peacefulness of the moment settle around them like warm sunlight. After they finished eating, Cole spoke softly. He told her that the next settlement they would visit was known for being kind and welcoming. He hoped they would see her true qualities, her patience, her humility, her gentle heart. Nayeli nodded, though inside, she felt a mixture of hope and fear. She wanted to believe things would go well, but she couldn't forget the rejections she had already faced. Still, she trusted Cole too much to turn back now. The settlement they reached in the late afternoon was lively but peaceful. Children ran around with small wooden toys, women carried baskets of food, and men worked near the fields. The houses were lined with simple wood and stone, giving the place a sense of warmth and community. When Cole approached, several people greeted him with friendly smiles. He was well known here. Nayeli walked slightly behind him, unsure of how to behave. She wasn't used to being in places outside her tribe, and she didn't want to accidentally offend anyone. She kept her hands gently together, her eyes observing the surroundings with quiet curiosity. Cole introduced her to a family he trusted, a couple who were known for being understanding and open-minded. They welcomed Nayeli with kind smiles and offered her a place to sit. Their daughter brought her a cup of warm herbal drink. Nayeli accepted it politely, feeling an unexpected warmth in her chest at how gently they treated her. For a while, they spoke about ordinary things: the weather, the crops, the quiet life of the settlement. Nayeli listened carefully and answered when spoken to, her voice soft but sincere. The family seemed impressed by her respectful manners. When the conversation shifted to her hopes for the future, Nayeli grew nervous. She looked at Cole for reassurance, and he gave her a small nod, reminding her she didn't have to rush. She explained, in her simple way, that she wanted a home where she felt she belonged, where she could help, contribute, and be valued. She spoke without fear, because she was telling the truth, something her heart had held for so long. The family admired her honesty. They told her she had a gentle spirit, and that gentleness was something beautiful. However, they also explained that introducing someone from another community into their family required careful consideration. They respected her deeply, but they needed more time to think about such a serious step. Nayeli understood. Though the answer wasn't a clear rejection, it wasn't acceptance either. She thanked them genuinely, her gratitude honest. As Cole and Nayeli walked away, he noticed the quiet disappointment in her steps. He slowed down and walked beside her, making sure she didn't feel alone in her sadness. He told her that she handled the conversation with grace. She didn't have to pretend or exaggerate anything, she simply showed her true self. And that was more than enough. Nayeli listened, her eyes focused on the path, but his words softened the heaviness in her heart. They traveled further the next day and visited more families in nearby settlements. Some welcomed her with warmth, others with polite curiosity. A few admired her skill in crafting and stitching, while others appreciated her calm nature. But still, when Cole gently brought up the topic of her future, people hesitated. Not because they disliked her, most found her kind, but because cultural differences made them unsure. Every time they left a place without a clear answer, Nayeli felt a small sting inside. She tried not to show it, because she didn't want Cole to feel he had failed her. But he noticed anyway. Cole was the kind of man who sensed feelings even when people didn't voice them. One evening, as the sun began dipping behind the hills, they set up a small camp near a quiet meadow. The soft glow of the sky cast long shadows across the grass, and a gentle breeze rustled through the area. Nayeli sat near the small fire, watching the flames flicker and dance. Cole sat across from her, sharpening one of his tools slowly. After a long silence, Nayeli spoke. She asked him if he thought she was chasing something impossible. Her voice was calm, but her eyes held a quiet sadness. She had begun to wonder if maybe she was searching for a place that didn't exist for someone like her. Cole set down his tool and looked at her with sincere eyes. He told her he didn't believe her dream was impossible. He told her that sometimes the right path took longer, and the right people appeared when you least expected. He reminded her that she wasn't just looking for anyone, she was looking for someone who saw her worth clearly, and finding someone like that was never easy for anyone, no matter where they came from. His words comforted her more than she expected. She realized Cole wasn't telling her empty things to make her feel better. He truly believed what he said. That belief alone helped her breathe a little easier. As days passed, their bond deepened quietly. They shared meals, conversations, and thoughtful silences. Cole learned how Nayeli noticed things like the changes in the wind or the patterns of nearby footprints. Nayeli learned that Cole always helped others without expecting anything in return. He had a steady kindness that didn't fade with inconvenience or difficulty. Sometimes, when they talked, Nayeli found herself smiling softly without meaning to. Cole noticed those small smiles, and though he never said anything, they warmed his heart in ways he hadn't expected. The journey taught Nayeli many things: how big the world was, how different people could be, and how kindness could appear in unexpected places. But it also taught her something even more important. She wasn't as alone as she had believed, and though she didn't know it yet, the path she walked with Cole was slowly leading her toward something far more meaningful than finding a husband. It was leading her toward discovering her own worth, and toward someone who saw that worth more clearly with every passing day. The morning sun rose softly over the hills, bringing another quiet day for Nayeli and Cole as they continued their journey. They had traveled to many settlements, spoken to many families, and met countless kind people. But despite all the hopeful conversations, Nayeli still had not found the place where she truly belonged. Each encounter left her with a mix of gratitude and disappointment. But even with that sadness, she kept moving forward. She had grown stronger through the journey, and her heart was not as fragile as before. Still, she sometimes wondered how long Cole would continue helping her. She didn't want to hold him back from his own life. She respected him too much to become a burden. That thought often sat heavy in her mind whenever she looked at him riding beside her. He seemed so steady and sure of himself, guiding her through lands she had never seen before. She admired him, not for his skills or his confidence, but for his patience, which never seemed to run out. As they reached another small settlement near a calm, winding river, they were welcomed politely by the villagers. Children laughed nearby, chasing each other around wooden fences. Women washing clothes by the river paused to wave at Cole. Men working by the fields nodded in recognition. Cole was known here as well. Nayeli walked quietly, observing the harmony of the place. It felt peaceful, almost like a small world of its own. When Cole introduced her to the village elder, a wise, gentle man with silver hair, the elder greeted her with warmth. He invited her to sit on a wooden bench in the shade of a tree. Cole sat beside her, offering silent support. The elder asked her about her journey. Nayeli answered honestly, explaining her desire for a home where she felt welcomed and valued. She spoke in her usual soft voice, choosing her words carefully. The elder listened closely, studying her face with patient eyes. When she finished, he took a long breath and spoke gently. He told her she was a good and humble woman, and anyone would be fortunate to have her in their family. But he also explained that each settlement had its own traditions and responsibilities. He said that acceptance was not just about desire, it needed understanding from both sides. Joining a new community required time, patience, and agreement from many people. He didn't reject her. He simply explained the reality with honesty. Nayeli thanked him sincerely. His words were kind and respectful, even if they did not give her the answer she hoped for. As she stood up to leave, the elder smiled gently and wished her peace on her path. Walking away, Nayeli felt a quiet ache in her heart. She had expected disappointment, but every time it came, it still stung. Cole walked beside her, matching her pace without saying a word. He knew her silence well by now. He could sense every shift in her emotions, even when she tried to hide them. They left the settlement and followed a quiet trail toward the open plains. The landscape stretched endlessly before them: soft grass, scattered trees, distant hills. As they walked, Nayeli finally spoke in a whisper. She asked Cole if he believed there truly was a place for someone like her, someone who didn't seem to fit anywhere. Her voice trembled slightly, not from fear, but from exhaustion. She had been strong for so long, and even strength had limits. Cole stopped walking. He waited for her to turn toward him. When she did, he looked into her eyes with sincere kindness. He told her that the problem was not her. She wasn't unwanted or unworthy. The world was simply wide, and sometimes the right place took time to find. He told her she had more courage than she realized. Not everyone could leave everything behind and search for belonging with such a strong heart. Nayeli looked at him, her eyes soft, touched by his words. She didn't know how to respond. She only knew that whenever he spoke, she felt less alone in the world. They continued their journey. In the days that followed, they visited other small communities. Many people welcomed her pleasantly, but no one could offer her the promise she was searching for. Each experience taught her something new about people, about life, about herself. Nayeli slowly began to see the world through a new lens. She realized that she had spent so long believing she was unwanted that she hadn't stopped to consider something important. Worth wasn't only given by others. It also came from within, and through this journey, she had grown into someone braver and more understanding than she ever imagined. Cole noticed the change in her. She spoke a little more often. She answered questions with more confidence. She no longer looked down at the ground when she talked to new people. She lifted her head, held her shoulders steadier, and let her voice be heard. One evening, after a long day of traveling, they stopped near a hill covered with small wildflowers. The sky had turned soft shades of pink and purple, and the wind carried the gentle scent of the blooming grass. They built a small fire and sat beside it, watching the flames flicker in the growing dusk. Nayeli sat quietly, her hands resting in her lap. She glanced at Cole, who was looking thoughtfully at the horizon. She wondered how she could ever repay him for what he had done. Without him, she might never have taken this journey. Without him, she might never have discovered her own courage. After a long silence, she gathered the strength to speak. She told him that if he ever felt she was slowing down his life, he didn't have to stay with her. She said she didn't want to take advantage of his kindness. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke, afraid of his answer. Cole turned to her immediately. His gaze was steady, filled with a seriousness that softened into gentle warmth. He told her she wasn't slowing him down at all. He wasn't helping her out of duty. He chose to be there because he cared. He said he respected her deeply, not because she asked for help, but because she walked through life with quiet dignity, even when she felt unseen. Nayeli felt her eyes grow warm, but she blinked the feeling away before tears could appear. She didn't want to cry, not out of sadness, but out of a feeling she didn't know how to describe. Days turned into weeks, and still they traveled together. But as time passed, something began to change, not in Nayeli's journey, but in the way Cole looked at her. He found himself watching her when she wasn't looking, noticing the way her expression softened when she saw a bird in the sky or a flower blooming by the trail. He admired how gently she interacted with people, how she always listened before she spoke. She had a quiet strength that many people overlooked, but not him. Nayeli, though she didn't admit it even to herself, had also grown attached to him. She found comfort in his steady presence, in the sound of his voice, in the simple way he treated her as someone worthy of attention. He never made her feel like a burden. With him, she felt visible. One afternoon, as they approached a peaceful valley surrounded by tall trees, Cole suddenly stopped riding. Nayeli looked at him with confusion, wondering if something was wrong, but he dismounted slowly and offered his hand to help her down. She stepped onto the ground, her heart beating faster without knowing why. Cole took a quiet breath before speaking. His voice was steady but carried a depth she had never heard before. He told her that they had spent many days searching for someone who would welcome her, someone who would give her the home she longed for. But somewhere along the journey, he had begun to realize something important, something he could no longer keep to himself. He told her that she was not unseen. She was not unwanted. She was not someone who failed to fit in. She was someone remarkable, someone rare, someone who deserved more than a simple place. She deserved a life filled with respect and understanding. And then, With gentle honesty, he told her he had seen all of that in her from the moment she first spoke to him with trembling courage. Nayeli stood still, her heart pounding. She couldn't find her voice. Cole continued, speaking slowly so she could take in every word. He told her that if she still wished for a home, for belonging, and for a partner who valued her deeply, he would be honored to be that person. He didn't demand an answer. He didn't pressure her. He only offered his heart with the same patience he had shown her throughout their journey. Nayeli felt warmth spreading through her chest, a feeling so gentle and overwhelming that she didn't know how to respond for a long moment. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw the sincerity in his eyes. The man who had walked beside her, listened to her, encouraged her, and respected her, had seen her worth all along. She finally found her voice and spoke softly, but with a clarity she had never felt before. She told him she never expected someone to look at her that way. She never believed she could matter this much to anyone, and yet, standing before him, she realized something she had been too afraid to consider. She didn't just trust him. She cared for him deeply. When she said she accepted his offer, her voice carried both certainty and calmness. Not because she felt pressured, and not because she had no other choice, but because she had finally found the place where she belonged. With him, their journey had begun with her feeling unwanted and unseen, but it ended with her discovering that she had value, strength, and a heart worthy of love. And in Cole, she found not just a partner, but a home she had been searching for all along.